Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. In today's episode, I'm joined by a class of 88 grad, David Allbritton, and we're going to talk all about his experiences as a midshipman candidate at NAPS, as an actual midshipman at the Naval Academy, his time as a surface warfare officer, transitioning to become a PAO, a public affairs officer, and how all of those experiences set the foundation for who he is today and the success he's had in the civilian world, making his way up the corporate ladder, and then eventually going and starting his own business. And now what he's doing, currently doing executive coaching and doing some pro bono work and helping giving back to service academy grads and other young men and women that are trying to make their way up the career ladder and path. So in this episode, we're just going to share a ton of stories. We're going to talk about his experience at NAPS and as a midshipman, dive deep into the lessons that he learned that set the cornerstone of his leadership philosophy that he carries with him today. And it's super entertaining. So I hope you enjoy it. If you ever have any questions, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoy this episode. Feel free to shoot me a message anytime and enjoy the listen. The Academy Insider Podcast is sponsored by the Vermeer Group, a residential real estate company that serves the United States Naval Academy community and other select clientele in both California and Texas. If I can ever answer a real estate related question for you or connect you with a trusted Academy affiliated agent in the market which you're in, please reach out to me directly at grant@thevermeergroup.com. You can also reach out to me on my LinkedIn page, Grant Vermeer, and I'd be happy to respond to you there. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. David, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your time and giving back to the Naval Academy community. If you don't mind just telling us a little bit about yourself, where are you from, how you ended up at the Naval Academy, took part in the last real plebe summer, as you would say, as a class of 88, and then what you did in the Navy and now what you're doing today in your life.
Awesome, Grant. Thank you so much for having me on first, and thank you for what you're doing. This is a tremendous mission. I'm very much committed to trying to recruit young men and women to come to this fantastic institution, and this podcast allows them to get their questions answered, because I can remember back in 1983 when I first applied to the Naval Academy, I didn't know much other than some booklets and some other things. So nice to see everybody. David Allbritton, class of 1988, originally from Philadelphia, but we spent some years living in Denver, Colorado when I was a kid, from 72 to 79. My interest in the Naval Academy got spawned there because one of my classmates in middle school, his oldest brother was a midshipman at the Academy, and he came home with his uniforms and his story. And all of us said, hey, we're going to go to the Naval Academy. We're going to fly, the planes for the Blue Angels, and this is what we're going to do. And then 79 came and we moved back to Philly and I started high school. So this was before cell phones and email and all that. So I lost touch with those guys. But when I got to high school in Philadelphia, ironically, my high school football coach did not go to the academy, but he had been a reserve naval officer. And when he heard of my interest in going to the Naval Academy, he just sopped me up. He just really, took interest in that, helped me get prepared. Obviously, he was my football coach, so he was doing other things with me in terms of training. But, he really helped me in many ways to kind of get mentally prepared and then go through the whole application process, et cetera. So another one of my teammates actually applied to West Point. He got into West Point. I did not get into the Naval Academy. I got offered to go to Naval Academy Prep School. So, but I'd also applied to the Coast Guard Academy and Penn State, and, being from Philly, all the Pennsylvania, New Jersey kind of schools, even though my intent was to go to Navy. And so I was disappointed at first that I didn't get accepted directly. Had I been accepted, I would have been David Robinson's classmate in class 87. But as I look back in retrospect, and I tell this story to parents and to young men and women all the time, going to NAPS was absolutely the best professional decision I've ever made in my entire career, bar none. I was 17 years old, out of Philadelphia, inner city high school, had fantastic grades, was top of the class, but I was not a good student. And I was not ready for the rigors of what I would ultimately experience as a plebe at the Naval Academy. And so going to NAPS, gave me a year of experience at with college level material, a year of maturity. I learned how to get yelled at, really developed, team relationships and knew what it was to truly, fold into a team relationship different from being a football player, et cetera, and really expand into what I needed to be successful as a plebe at the Academy. And so I'm thankful that I made that choice and didn't go to Coast Guard Academy or any of the other schools, because it truly helped me develop. So, I went to the Academy 4 years, graduating, became a surface warfare officer, went to surface warfare officer school in Newport, Rhode Island for 4 months, and then got to, stationed on USS Portland. It was a dock landing ship out of Little Creek, Virginia, in Norfolk. We used to call it the Portless because we were never there.
Always out
um,
to sea.
Always
Yeah.
out to sea. I know I was on that boat for 39 months. I remember 26 of them being gone, but I know it was more than 20. Just deployed, just somewhere always, right? So we
Yeah.
were an amphibious ship, carried Marines. I had about 450 sailors, and we carried 450 Marines. Did a med cruise 6 months, and 2.5 months after we came back from that med cruise, Saddam Hussein went into Kuwait on August 2nd, and we left August 5th. And
Hmm.
we were gone for just over 8 months. And
Yeah.
so just a tremendous life experience, a lot of boredom too, but I, sitting doing gator squares in the Gulf for months at a time, but I picked up all my quals, right?
Yep.
So as you think about what a swell career path was then back then, you did
Hmm.
2 ships before you did your shore tour.
Yep.
Well, because I had so much sea time and got my SWO pin as an ensign and all
Hmm.
this other stuff, I didn't have to do another ship. And so I went to the Naval Postgraduate School. I was still a
Nice.
frocked lieutenant, and
Yep.
there was only, for that recall, one other of my classmates out there at the same time.
Hmm.
87 was there, and a bunch of older, more mature folks were there. But
Yeah.
my classmates were 05s and 04s and senior 03s, and I'm a frocked lieutenant at the time, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. Pretty
So
cool. And being in Monterey is not a bad thing either, man.
Honor, yeah, it was tough, arduous duty, but I signed up for it. I served my country well. So, so I did
Love it.
that for 2 years. And then when it was time for me to, prepare for graduation, etc., I was wanting to continue. I love the Navy. Obviously, picked up some more time that I owed.
Hmm.
But the way things worked out, I was year group 88. They were just sending year group 87 to department head school. So
Hmm.
the Navy was wanting to send me back to a second sea tour. I
Yep.
was totally against that. I did not want to do that. But with as much time as I'd spent away on, on the first ship,
Yep.
had all my quals, I didn't feel it was going to be helpful for my career, and I didn't want to be deployed like that again. So I
Yep.
looked for ways to, still be viable in the Navy, but look for other careers. One of
Yep.
my best friends from NAPS in the Naval Academy had switched to public affairs. And so I visited him where he was stationed on the Navy news desk in the Pentagon, got to meet the two-star admiral who ran Navy public affairs and a lot of the staff there. Loved it. And so I put in a package with SecNav's office and got picked up to become Navy Public Affairs Officer. So when I graduated from PG school, I went to the Defense Information School, and it was then in Indianapolis, Indiana, at Fort Benjamin
Hmm.
Harrison. It is currently at Fort Meade in Maryland.
Yep.
Side note, about a month ago, I just got elected into the Hall of Fame, the Defense Information School Hall of Fame, which was pretty cool. So I'm pretty proud of that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That was pretty cool.
Congratulations. And
So it did,
I got a quick question. Sorry to
yeah,
interject here, but
nah, no worries.
I would say the vast majority of people, when they think of public affairs officers today, right?
Hmm.
It's social media, social media, social media, right? At that point, there is no Facebook, there's no Instagram. Like, what are
No.
you doing as a public affairs officer at that point? And do you think the mission of what you were doing then is very similar to the way it's being done today, just with different mediums and avenues, or kind of what's your thoughts on that aspect?
It's very similar. The job of the Navy Public Affairs Officer is to tell the Navy story through all
Yep.
mediums, through all channels, to all audiences. You have to dissect who your audiences are and how you convey that. Social media
Yep.
just gives you another channel to react to. Now, social media
Yep.
also creates a two-way dialogue between this as well. So you have to
Sure.
be very cognizant of how you say it, what you say, and all those things. But our job was the same. To
Hmm.
tell the story, it helped us with recruitment for the Navy, but it also
Sure.
helped us from a power projection perspective in
Hmm.
terms of communicating to the world the strength of U.S. Navy and how we operated, where we operated, all of that. We dealt with issues as it related to personnel, but we also dealt with hardware issues. We dealt with unfortunate issues, right?
Sure.
I remember being on the news desk in 1994. Lieutenant Kara Holtgreen was an F-14 pilot who unfortunately lost her life. She
Mhm.
crashed, and that time was when women had first gotten the chance to fly in combat aircraft. And so the
Mhm.
narrative that came out around that was women shouldn't be in aircraft and all. And it was unfortunate because this young woman had signed up to do something that was so dangerous, yet she was serving her country well, and
Mhm.
people were focusing on the wrong area. And
Yep.
so for us, it was very important to preserve her legacy
Mhm.
because, I mean, she was a hero. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly. And so that to me was the mission of being a public. I was proud to be a public affairs officer to kind
Yeah.
of do that. Me, my teammates, and other folks. And then if you kind of expand that to all areas and all issues that we dealt with across the Navy, it was a very important role to tell that Navy story to kind of help us in positioning where we are around the world. So
Sure.
I was very proud of that service. So it's on the Navy news desk, taking inbound media inquiries. The Pentagon press corps was walking through our offices daily. So, dealing with that and learning how to think on your feet and say the right things and all that kind of stuff, which was a great tool for me later in my career. Then I had the honor. So I left the desk, the news desk, and I went to become the aide to the two-star who ran Navy Public Affairs. He's iconic. Rear Admiral Kendall P. He's class 68, played quarterback here behind Roger Staubach. One of the best leaders that I've ever known and worked for. So I learned a lot from him. And then I left there and had another arduous tour of duty in London, England. I went to Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Naval Forces Europe in the West End of London from 95 to 98. And so raised my hand and served my country well in London.
Yeah.
And I was
Monterey and London, man. Yeah. You're talking about you're trying to get away from that sea life. You did it well, brother.
It was tough, but somebody had to do it, and I was glad I was able to. So did that, but then I literally got out of the Navy from there. Didn't intend to, but it was just one of those circumstances that happen that you don't expect. And so the chief communications officer at Sears Roebuck Company came over to London with his wife and teenage boys. And he had a retired Navy PAO 05 working for him at Sears. Well, that guy's former boss was my current boss in 06, who was the public affairs officer at Sincus Navier. And so he called his old boss up and said, "Hey, my Sears boss is coming over. You mind taking care of him?" Well, the 06 gives that assignment to the 03. And I said, "Aye, sir, no problem."
Classic.
So, I met this man and, took him on a tour of our command. We were kitty cornered to the American Embassy. At the time, the ambassador was Admiral Bill Crowell, who was the former chairman of Joint Chiefs. We went to lunch over there, and it just so happened as we were leaving to hit the elevator, Admiral Crowell turned the corner and we got to introduce, and it was pretty cool. So I shook this man's hand, never thought I'd see him again. And this was June of 97. Well, August 1st of 97, I was scheduled to put on 04. So I was doing pretty well in my career. I was not even 9 years in at that point. Well, a couple months go by right after Labor Day, and I got a call saying, "Hey, look, send me a resume. We want to think about you for a job." I'm like, "I'm a naval officer. I don't have a resume." So
we don't have to submit those to the board. Yeah.
Right. So my buddy who had been a public affairs officer, he had gotten out by that time. So I took his resume, doctored mine up, and sent it in. And fast forward, they actually flew me to Chicago for a week, put me up, and had me interview for this job. And it was just one of these jobs that as I look back, I said, if I turn this job down, I will never forgive myself. Here's why it was cool. A couple of things about me is I'm a huge bass fisherman, and I'm not as big anymore, but back then I was a huge NASCAR fan. Jeff Gordon was my guy. I'm a Rainbow Warrior all the way through. Well, part of this job was, it was the PR specialist for Sears Automotive. Right. So the Sears Auto Centers, 750 Sears Auto Centers, 330 National Tire and Battery stores. And then anything dealing with diehard batteries, Craftsman tools, those types of things. And if you think about NASCAR back then, we had the NASCAR Craftsman truck series. Craftsman was the official tool of NASCAR. Diehard was the official battery of NASCAR. Darrell Waltrip was sponsored by Sears. And we had the diehard 500, at Talladega, right? So this job means I ran all PR for all Sears racing properties, which means I got to go to every race. I got to be behind the scenes. I would be sitting in the driver's meeting. Jeff Bodine would be over here. Jeff Gordon be over here. Dale Earnhardt be over there. And I'm talking to them like I'm talking to you. And I was like, if I don't take that job, I'm probably going to be kicking my own butt for the rest of my life. And so I literally got out. I actually got special consideration. I got out of the Navy. And, I took that job. So that began my corporate career. Sure. I won't take you through all the details, but my goal when I got out was to become a chief communications officer, which 13 years later I was able to at a defense company called Excelis that had spun off from ITT in 2011. That company got acquired in so I was at Excelis and we got acquired in 2015. The president at General Motors was on our board at Excelis. He said, "Well, you're not going to have a job. Why don't you come work for me?" So I went to GM in Detroit and I ran all global communications outside the United States for 3.5 years. But I'd also been on the board at General Motors Defense. So their aerospace and defense business. Well, they made some leadership changes in GM Defense. And I got a call one day, you're going to be the new president of GM Defense. And so I did that for a couple of years. And then I was the 7th executive from GM to go to Amazon, where I was a VP of Communications, Amazon Web Services. And then my life changed forever. My daughter was diagnosed with a form of leukemia in 2021, March. And so just threw me for a loop. I literally took a leave of absence that became a permanent resignation so I could have flexibility, and decided that I wasn't going back to a corporate job. I was going to start my own company, and so I could have, flexibility, etc. And it was around that time I started interviewing, being considered for a role as an independent director on a public company board of directors, which I have now been sitting since April of 2022. Embecta was a spinoff from Becton Dickinson. It's a $1.2 billion diabetes care business. And I've been on that board for about 2 years now, 2.5. And so, so that, as I transitioned, my company first was a PR consulting business that morphed into executive coaching. And today, I'm a certified executive coach by the International Coaching Federation. And I work for a coaching firm called CRA Admired Leadership out of Philadelphia. And so I've a wide range of clients from, senior level corporate folks to mid-level down to small businesses across associations, nonprofits, educational institutions. It's an opportunity for me to just, everything that I've done in my career, been successful, I get to pour it into my coaching clients and be in that spirit of helping others advance in their careers as well.
That's awesome. And how often do you come across service academy graduates or veterans coming through? And do you have an ability to kind of like pick or choose and put a preference for coaching veterans in that? Or how's that process been for you?
In my official coaching capacity, not many service academy grads, just because of how it comes together. I'm very active. I still go to football games and still reach into the network and, leverage LinkedIn and all that. When I come across academy grads, most times I do a lot of pro bono, just, hey, let's talk about it. If you're transitioning, let's talk about it. If you are a grad and you're thinking about a new career path or a new job opportunity, let's talk about it. Right. I don't necessarily get into official coaching, monetarily or anything, just because it's, I recall just being here before I got my ring. One day you're going to knock that ring on the table and that network is going to step up for you. And so there's been times, part of my success. I go back to my ship, USS Portland. My first skipper was a class of 69 grad. Admiral Pease was a class of 68. Some these grads have been very helpful, supportive in my career. And so for me, that's just one way to get back.
Yeah, no, I love it. And you've talked about it in telling your story. You've highlighted the success you had in the Navy, outside of the Navy, kind of working in corporate America and making your way up to then even starting your own business and now giving back in a coaching and a mentoring sense.
Mm-hmm.
What about your Naval Academy experience? And it was funny because you really highlighted even the NAPS experience even before the Naval Academy experience.
Yeah.
But what about that? Can you credit to setting the foundation that you've taken along each step of your journey? Do you have any stories of your time as a midshipman that like really highlight kind of the foundation that was built inside of you as a person that kind of set you along this path?
Yeah, there's countless of those, right? But if you think about just the overall, right, coming up, fairly disciplined family and all that, but it wasn't the military, right? My dad's brother was a Marine, drill sergeant. So, that was one thing. But, I think one of the biggest, kind of theses, if you will, that kind of came across was you can't be a good leader until you've learned how to be a good follower. And so plebe summer and just the summer of NAPS just really broke you down to brass tacks. And then they took away all your earthly rights and gave them back to you as privileges, right? So that's what we experienced. And so you learned a lot. And then you learned that you had to lean on that person to your left and to your right to get through this place because you're not going to do it alone. So even on your worst day, and I think this is kind of the core of, my leadership thesis is, you never know what somebody else is going through. You can have your worst day, but if you look over there at your classmate, they could be having a worse time because you don't know what else is going on in their world. And so when you figure out that you can put aside your own feelings, okay, and about your own situation, right, and then help somebody else who's struggling more than you, you feel better. Okay. Your situation's not as bad as you think it is, but if you help that person get through theirs, then both of you are better because of that. I think that's the crux of how I kind of look at relationships from that experience at NAPS and at, during plebe summer and those types of things.
100%.
But then, so then, the whole summer, both those summers were, really all about putting you in situations that were hard and stressful, pressure
Mhm.
filled, uncertainty,
Yep.
and trying to allow you to find your own fortitude to get through it, right?
Mhm.
Even when you didn't think you could.
Yep.
Okay. So you get motivated, the self motivation you get inspired, all
Mhm.
that stuff happens. And even when you think you can't get it done, this inner strength pops out and you're just like, wow, I can take one more step. One story, and I tell him, one of my classmates was a football player. We went to Naps. He was in my platoon. Big Joe Brennan. Joe Brennan was 6'4", probably 260 back then as a Napster. And in the platoon, he was ahead of me. And when we went on these fun runs, yeah, right, in formation, every time I felt like I couldn't take another step,
Mhm.
I'd look at Joe, and if Joe could take another step, then I could take another step.
Yep.
And so I tell, I've told that story a zillion times. And I tell every time I see him, I tell him oh, Dave, shut up. But truly, Joe Brennan was an inspiration for me to get through naps, and that's just one thing that helped me mentally get through. Because there were days, I thought I was in shape. I
Mhm.
was an athlete. I played a lot of
Yeah, I'm a D1
basketball and all that.
athlete. I wanna play
But
football.
well, I played so I played football at Naps, but I played 150s, right? I wasn't a
Okay.
recruited athlete at all.
Yeah.
But, I played in high school and stuff. So, I
Mhm.
was okay, but I wasn't
Yeah.
definitely not a D1 type of guy, but he was. But he was a big guy. And if he
Yeah.
could take another step, then why can't I take another step?
Sure.
And so you equate that to everything that you go through in your life, and
Mhm.
it equates well. And
Yep.
so, that to me was very instrumental as well. But I think also too, right? So we all come from all parts of this great country.
Yep.
And if you think about just this diverse set of individuals who come from all backgrounds, et cetera, and now they're plugged together in this situation, right?
Mhm.
The design is to create a cohesive unit that's going to operate as one. And that doesn't always happen in every aspect of your life, but we learned how to do it. We
Yep.
learned, think about one of the earliest rates we had to learn where, and if for some point in time, I still remembered where all my platoon mates and all, where they were from,
Where they're from.
right? I had to know that. And it seemed asinine at the time, but no, it helped you get to know these people because you're going to be leaning on them like they're going to be leaning on you too. So you're
Yep.
creating authentic relationships because you know more than just superficial knowledge. That equates very well to being a leader at a senior level inside a corporation.
Well, 100%. I resonate so much with each story that you talked about, and like your core philosophy, right? Of never, like, always just kind of acting with kindness because you never really know what's going on in someone else's life. This is
Right.
literally a LinkedIn post that I made the other day, a little infographic, right? And it's a big circle and it's like what's going on in someone's life. And then a tiny little circle, and it points to it that says what you know about what's going on in their life.
Absolutely
Right.
right.
And so
Absolutely.
for me, it's always been about the fact, and it's something I learned about at the academy, is you should never underestimate the impact you can make in people's life with simple action, with simple kindness, with simple investment, with simple attention to that person, because you never know what they're going through. And that moment of kindness, that moment of conversation, that moment of care may be a huge difference maker in that person's life. Right. There are
Absolutely.
multiple times for me where I was on the breaking point of being ready to leave the academy. And it's a story I tell. Plebe summer, my company officer, Lieutenant Burke, he's my company officer. I'm standing CMOD during plebe summer, and
Hmm.
down the hallway is walking the gunnery sergeant, who's the staff duty officer, the SDO that day, coming down that way. And again, I'm really like I'm on the brink, right? Like we talk about the fly that'll break, or the straw that'll break the camel's back. Like there was just one straw left before I crumble. Right. And that gunnery sergeant would have been more than a little piece of straw. I tell you what, if that dude had walked over there and ripped
Yes,
me a new
sir.
one. Uh, and my company officer walked out while I was on CMOD and just had a conversation with me. He stopped, he paused, he just talked to me, asked me about my family, asked me about where I'm from, right? Like we talked about this TV show. "Hey, what's your favorite TV show? Like, what do you miss?" I talked to him about How I Met Your Mother, like all this different stuff. And had he not done that, had he not had a 3-minute conversation with me, because again, when the SDO is walking by, now the SDO is not worried about getting on me. The SDO is worried about greeting the officer, right? "Hey, good
Mhm.
morning, sir. How are you? Blah, blah, blah." And he just continues on his way. Right. And so you can never underestimate the impact you can make in people's life based on very
Absolutely.
simple action. Right. And so I
Absolutely.
love that story that you told. And the story you told about your friend cracks me up too, because I had this guy, Mike Brown. He was my teammate. and we're in plebe summer. We're in the same running group during plebe summer. And we were both done. We're like, every day we're running around Farragut Loop. We're talking about it. We're like, you leaving today? I was like, yeah, I'm leaving today. You leaving today? Yeah. But it was like kind of a little bit of a joke, but like,
Right.
we knew that we were going to show up the next morning and see each other. Right. Like we knew that like, if Mike's going to show up tomorrow morning, like I'll show up tomorrow morning. Right. Like we're going to get through this together despite like not being happy about it. Right. And so
Absolutely right.
it's really cool. And I appreciate you like sharing those stories, because I think it's funny when we look back and reflect on our time at the academy, these things that seem minuscule, these things that seem like funny little stories in the moment are really like these massive cornerstones of our leadership philosophy, or the cornerstones of our personality and foundation and what we carry with us. Right. And so, I appreciate you like sharing those experiences for you. And another piece I talked about at the academy is all about mentors. And so I'm going to turn this back to you. As you telling this, did you have any mentors during your time at the academy, whether they were senior enlisted staff, officers, your company officer, instructors, that helped you really realize some of these lessons you were going through and navigate the difficulties of the experience?
So as a coach, I differentiate the term mentor, and here's how.
Okay.
I've got big M mentors and I've got lowercase m mentors. A big M mentor is kind of assigned to you. It's more formalized, right? Or you've asked somebody, will you be my mentor?
Mm-hmm.
I've had a good number of those, but I've gotten more out of my small M mentors where we never even used the term. Okay. But they mentored me in ways because they reached into me, they poured into me, reached out to me, poured into me, gave me insights, gave me knowledge, gave me access, explained things. And it didn't necessarily have any benefit to them, but it was going to help me tremendously. Okay. And so I've got countless of those people inside the academy, outside the academy, throughout my entire career. Inside the academy, there are so many upper class who, I mean, obviously as a plebe, the second class for us were just the enemy. But I have some of my best friends today are guys who were second class back then.
Yeah.
But those experiences were, developed and designed for you to grow, to kind of understand yourself in a different context, and they did it for a purpose. And what I've explained, particularly when I was a blue and gold officer some years ago, the reason that you go through plebe summer and you have the reef points and you got to learn all the rates and do chow calls and all that other stuff, and then you got 6 people here screaming at the top of your lungs. That might have, I don't know if they do that today, but for us, definitely.
Still going.
But reason you have to learn that then is to develop the skill so that if you are flying jet aircraft later in your career and something goes wrong, something happens with the wing, something happens with the engine, right? You're going to use your training. You're going to fall back into what you know. You're going to stay calm, go through your procedures, and you're going to save your life and the life of other people who, you're responsible for, who somebody might be sitting in the back seat, or that plane may go down in a residential neighborhood, whatever that is, right? We, the Navy, the military, the country needs you to stay calm and to handle it. So if you equate that back to getting yelled at when you're given the menu for noon meal and being able to, okay, when you first started plebe summer, freaking out about it, by the time you get to end of plebe year and you have somebody screaming at you, it doesn't matter, right? You've learned the core essence of how to stay calm and cool and collected under pressure. That's why it happens. And so as much as it sucked when you were going through it, it was not designed for you to like it. It has tangential benefits for you in so many ways in other aspects of your life. And so that's the crux. That's how you understand why and how, these things happen at the academy to prepare you for whatever's coming next for you.
Yeah. No, without a doubt. And just to answer your question, I saw a photo the other day of plebes standing on the little tiles in Bancroft Hall, the deck plates in the front leaning rest. One dude's still up yelling chow calls. 3 dudes are on their face in the front leaning rest. So
the good old days.
Chow calls are still alive and well, and people are it's still going.
Yes, there we go. It's good to know.
The Naval Academy is still the Naval Academy.
It's a rite of passage.
Things may change, but yeah, the core is always what it is.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I love what you're talking about, because I love how you differentiated again between big M mentor, little M mentor. Because I think another thing the Naval Academy really teaches in the military is that words matter, and the way you explain things are really important. And for me, I love talking about the Naval Academy experience about building resilience. And I feel like a lot of time resilience for people is like this idea around surviving. Oh, resilience is like, oh yeah, you just like survive and get through. But what I love about the academy experience that you're talking about is it's really about overcoming adversity continuously, getting repetitions and repetitions of being in stressful environments, of overcoming adversity to be better for the next harder moment, for that moment, that critical moment in your life, whether again, in your career, whether in your personal life, whatever it is, you're going to be prepared for that moment as best as you can possibly be because of the constant difficult times, the constant stress that you're put under at the academy, right? And it sets you up. The
Right.
power of the midshipman experience is becoming someone who handles the hard moments in life better. And you just get
Absolutely.
better at it because you get repetition after repetition after repetition of overcoming failure and like facing really difficult moments. All right. And so
Absolutely.
it's very cool. And I want to transition now a little bit into how the Naval Academy experience sets you up for your time as a surface warfare officer, right? We joke again, your time on the port list, a lot of time out to sea, baby, a lot of time out
Yes.
to sea.
Yes.
What about your Naval Academy experience had you ready to stand in front of your sailors in your division and operate as a surface warfare officer at that time?
That was a scary moment. And
Mm,
I reflect on it a lot. I'm 22 years old. I'm fresh out of academy. My head's this big because I'm wearing that ring, and I'm a graduate. I'm an ensign now. But now, okay, I'm a division officer of men. I'm
yep,
22 years old. My chief petty officer had been in the Navy 24 years. So he's been
yep,
in the Navy longer than I've been alive.
mm,
It's kind of hilarious story, but it's one I tell a lot, and it actually helped me think about leadership in a different way. My first day on the ship, I'm introduced to my chief petty officer. So I was going to be the gunnery officer on the ship. So gunner's mate chief Robert R. Wager steps up to me. Hey, ensign, welcome aboard. We shake hands, and he said, hey, he goes through his little spiel. Hey, welcome to the ship. Da 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 da. He said, but look, let's break it down. Let me tell you something. He pointed at me. You're the boss. And then he pointed his thumb back at him. But I'm in charge. You listen to me, and I'll keep you out of trouble. I'll teach you the ropes, and you're going to
mm,
be very successful here.
yep.
Now, Ensign David Allbritton, fresh out of Naval Academy, my head is this big, and I'm like, who's he talking to? I'm the ensign. And I didn't say it out loud, but my attitude was there. Absolutely. Right. But I tell you what, the reason I'm sitting here successful today is because that man taught me so much about how to be a leader of men on that ship, right? Because you're going to come across circumstances that you can never anticipate, right?
Mhm,
Because, the difference in being an officer in the military, Marine Corps, Navy, doesn't matter. You are a leader. You're not a people manager. And when I
mm,
say leader, you're going to be involved with your men and women under your charge. You're going to be involved in their entire life. If they're having challenges outside with their marriage, with alcohol, with get into a car accident, those types of things, guess what? As their leader, you're going to be involved. You need to be involved to make
yep,
sure that their care and well-being is taken care of, because you need that for solid leadership. But the Navy needs that too. The Marine Corps needs them to be okay as well. And
mhm,
so just that caring, that understanding is different. But then also being cognizant of the fact that you can learn in a 360-degree sphere of influence. It does not matter what your title is, right? You can call me Grand Poobah if you want to, but what do people relate to, and how am I learning from these individuals, from this man who has 24 years of experience in the Navy? If I
mhm,
don't take advantage of that experience, then shame on me. And so when I got out of my own way and then folded into, okay, Chief, teach me. And I've had plenty of times when Chief will pull me aside, okay, Ensign, you're screwing up. The old man wanted this and you're giving him that. You should have been giving him that. So here's how you need to do this, right?
mhm,
That helped me and helped
yeah.
me stay on track. So I'm forever thankful for him pouring into me that way. I've tried to find him for many years. I don't know whatever happened to him. But, I tell that story for anybody who hears it. If they hear that name, then just know David Allbritton is very thankful for Gunner's Mate Chief Robert R. Wager.
Love every bit of it because I think what you mentioned is something to highlight for, especially for the young men and women who are considering, a service academy education, and for parents to understand what your kids who you feel like are your babies and are your children, but the reality of the world that they're about to enter into is that when you're at the academy, it's really like, again, you're in your own little world, right? The Naval Academy really is its own little bubble, and it's a
Mhm.
difficult bubble, but you're not, again, you're being taken care of. You're being fed every day, right? Like you have a place to live. Like it's
Right.
a controlled environment. The moment you step out into the fleet, it's no longer just your problems. When you
No.
have sailors, you have to help them deal with real life situations,
Absolutely.
right? And that chief, like you're saying, may have been in the Navy longer than you've been alive, right? And sailors are going to come to you with real life problems, like you're saying, marital problems, financial problems,
Mhm.
drinking problems, whatever the case is. And they're going to come to you as the officer looking for solutions, looking for help, looking for advice, and that is your job. Is to
Absolutely.
take care of them and to like genuinely help them win and like get them on the right track. And that's really difficult because like you're saying, whether you're a SWO, whether you're a submariner, whether you're a cryptologic officer, yeah, you have your tactical mission and job, but your job first, your primary responsibility is being a leader of men and women,
Absolutely.
right? And helping them with their real problems. And there are going to be real problems. I told my dad's on the backstage listening to this thing. I told the story. I'm a 22-year-old ensign. We fly out to Scotland. We're getting ready to board a submarine, right? And I get a call. We're supposed to get like to the pier at like 6 a.m., right? I get a phone call at like 11:30 p.m. the night before. One of my sailors bawling his eyes out, crying, right? And I'm like, oh, like what? Like what's going on? I call my chief. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. You know, like his battle buddy just gave me a call. Like he's breaking down. We got to go. So like and these teams were comprised of 3 different commands that I'm going to be in charge of, right? And so we're at different hotels. So me and my chief, we jump in a cab, we drive like 20 minutes to another hotel in the United Kingdom to go meet with this sailor, right? And we find out that he's having extreme marital problems. He's going through a divorce. His wife has a power of attorney for all of his assets as they're
Mhm.
separating, and he's about to get underway on a submarine for the next 90 days and be out of
Yes.
communication, right? Like, and guess what? That's being presented to me as a 22-year-old, and I'm supposed to be the one to help provide guidance, mentorship, and solutions,
Right.
right? And so,
Right.
again, when we talk about all these things, when we talk about all the silliness of the quote unquote silliness of the academy and all the ridiculous stuff that's meant to put pressure into their lives, it's because you're gonna end up in that situation where you're being tasked with taking care of people with real life problems. And if you
Absolutely
want
right.
to run away from them, you can't, right? Like you need to be the person, the backstop to like help provide that support along with the chief, right? And take care of those things. And it's just like, whew, it's crazy, but that's the reality of being a naval officer or a Marine Corps
Absolutely
officer.
right. Absolutely
Right?
right.
So, yeah. And now just turning it back to you again a little bit is these experiences, that relationship with your chief, experiences at JO, as you're making that transition out of the military and into the civilian world, what really changed for you and what things stayed consistent, right? Like what things did you want to bring with you from your time in the military into the civilian world? And what things did you realize, hey, I'm going to have to adjust my ways and kind of adapt to a new culture?
It was totally different. And
Mhm.
particularly, I went into a company at Sears on a team that had nobody who was a veteran. Okay. So I'm the only veteran and I'm fresh out of uniform. Even using the term sir and ma'am, sometimes that offends people. I didn't know that. Okay. So even the simplest things you have to understand. And the other people who'd never served don't have your context. And so rather than the world adapting to you, you got to adapt to the world that you're now in. And it was tough for me. That's a huge transition. A lot of transitioning veterans face is that the world's not about you anymore. Okay. You're not in this
Mhm.
military structure. This world doesn't really know that much. I can't tell you how many times when you try to explain, well, I was a lieutenant commander. Oh, is that the same as a sergeant? Right? I mean, because they don't have context.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of get into the space where you're going to experience some of that. And so you've got to be able to be patient and explain it and understand that there's going to be uncertainty and they're going to have questions or they're not going to resonate with you automatically. And so you're going to have to, prove why you are here and why you're adding value and all that. So what that does is just forces you to have a relational capacity that's much different,
Yeah.
and so you're going to have to leverage some of what made you successful in the military, in terms of how well you were able to easily make relationships work and all that kind of stuff. You're going to double down on that and fold into it on the corporate context. Learn as much as you can about them, educate them as much about you, so that you at least have a common baseline so that you can operate as you're learning what your new role and responsibility is in this civilian context. Some people do really, really well with that, others struggle. You have to understand and be cognizant of where you are along that continuum, and then do what you need to make sure that you stay on track. Because if you still show up as that military rank, and you're wearing your rank on your collar and all those types of things, the long-term viability of your career is going to take a huge hit, right? You
Yep.
can't still show up as that military person. I found that even going into aerospace and defense companies that work with the military directly, it's run by civilians who may or
Mhm.
may not have served in the military.
Yeah.
So they don't know the rank structure, they don't know the difference in the services or the missions and those types of things. And you can't
Yeah.
assume that they do.
Yep.
And you can't show up wearing that rank just because it's important to you. Again, you have to fold into their environment instead of vice versa.
No, absolutely. And kind of talking about this transition now, we've really touched on the power of the midshipman experience, the power of life as a junior officer and the adventure associated with that. And now jumping into, again, the influence of the Naval Academy network, especially in relation, as we're talking about, having mentors and advocates and champions in this civilian world where it is a different culture. And so, I want to turn it to you at this point in your career and your life, is talking about how has the Naval Academy network helped you in your life in kind of post-military, and how would you describe what is the Naval Academy network in the benefit and the power of it to someone who may be considering this institution?
Actually, I would expand that concept to
Yep.
the Service Academy network,
Yep.
because there have been people from West Point Air Force Academy, Coast Guard Academy, who have been as instrumental in my success as other fellow grads.
Mhm.
Okay, because as you think about it, if we get out of the military, whether it's after 5 years or after 30 years, we're all then becoming civilians and have to form into this new world and do what we're going to do, whatever we choose to do functionally and professionally, etc. Even if we're owning our own business and doing something. So, but being able to knock that ring on the table and have a very similar experience to somebody from West Point or Air Force Academy, we have that common bond. And only we can joke each other, right? Do the old Army Navy thing and Air Force thing and all that. But it's only we two can do that when we're having a conversation. However, those people folding into me, giving me information, introducing me into the network, give me access to things. I've had so many of those folks across my career, across the broader academy network, that have been very helpful for me.
Yep.
And it doesn't necessarily mean, hey, I'm going to find you a job, or because that's not their job to do. But can they be
Yep.
helpful and impactful? Making their network your network, giving you information about how and why they chose their own functional discipline, and how that might be relevant for you as you think about transitioning, all those things. So
Mhm.
leveraging all those voices is a tremendous value. And the fact it's kind of like its own fraternity in a way, and it's a very unique fraternity that only we serve, that we sit in, that I've leveraged countless times. And
Mhm.
it's it's a pride that I'm able to do that and do it
Mhm.
differently. And not to say that graduates from Harvard and Stanford and they don't have similar and unique experience from their own networks, etc. But ours is different in that we served our country and we wore the uniform, and some of us went to war, and
Mhm.
there's something else that we have that others don't. And I'm close with folks that went to ROTC and went to OCS and all that. But there's something about wearing that ring across the academy system
Yeah.
that just makes the relationship instantly different. And you
Yeah.
can fold into it like you've known that person 20 years, and then you're off and running as soon as you hit the ground.
Yeah. And what would you offer as advice to, again, if you were talking directly to a midshipman or something of the sort, what would you advise them on how to really leverage and capitalize on this network, especially while they're still in the service, and taking advantage of it and building those relationships
Hmm.
now, and kind of not making it, you mentioned even before the show, like not making it a transaction, but really relationship building.
Yeah. So it's really thinking about the concept of creating a relationship before you need it. Because as you think about transitioning and going off in your career and doing other things, other people are doing the same thing. And so where you are envisioning where you're going to be 20 years from now, and you can have no certainty on where that's going to be, just because life is going to come at you. You're going to get married, you're going to have children, stuff, bad things can happen with health, and whatever happens to you.
Yep.
Other people are also progressing as well. And so that person who was in your company, who was 2 years ahead of you, you don't have to be best friends. You don't have to be going out all the time. But now you have tools. You got LinkedIn, you got Facebook, Instagram, text
Mhm.
messages. You can stay in touch and abreast of what other people are doing and be genuinely concerned about what they're doing and how you might be helpful. So you're adding value to that person, even
Mhm.
though, they're not your best friend, you're not trading Christmas cards, but your network is your net worth. And if you invest in it now, when you need it 20, 25, 30 years from now, and sometime in between, it will definitely impact your level of success because you can pour from, you can pour into, but also get a pouring from that network to help you think about something differently, get introductions, find a job, etc. I mean, today's, second class as you're a plebe might be the CEO of Google in 30 years, right? And then, okay, let's just make it up. Okay. Now
Yep.
you're a senior vice president at company X.
Mhm.
And guess what? That company just got acquired by a bigger company and your job goes away.
Yep.
You might be 52 years old, you're making a ton of money and all that, but now your life changed in a way that you can't control, somebody else making that decision. Your network is what's going to get you to that next thing if you're not ready to retire. And
Yep.
that guy who was your second class, 40 years ago or whatever it was, who's now CEO of Google, hey George, hey, how you doing? How's Susan doing? How your kids doing? That kind of thing. Because you got a relationship, you'd
Yep.
be surprised how that turns into something that can be, of value to you. It may not even be a job. It might be a consulting gig to tide you over until you get something else. But
Yep.
it's all based on the relationship.
Mm.
So think about that now. As I tell my own kids, right? You need to be thinking about now how you're living when you're my age. Okay. So the
Yep.
decisions you're making now are going to be impactful for how you're living when you're my age. So, if your kids
Mhm.
don't go to Naval Academy, are you taking student loans or are you writing checks? You're making that choice right now.
Mhm.
So think about
Think about it. I love, and I'm gonna double down on what you said, which is build it before you need it.
it.
Build it before you need it, right? And if you can build those relationships now and establish those things now, and again, build genuine relationships with people before you actually need something, right? Then like again, it's never a transaction, right? Like it's a genuine friendship, it's a genuine shared experience. And again, the beautiful thing about this community and about this network is if you pour into it, if you invest into the relationships, there is someone who's going to be there who is always going to be able to take care of you and help you, right? But the onus is on you to build it, right? To like actually take advantage of it and create those relationships, right? And
Absolutely.
so I'm so grateful for you taking the time to come here and give back and share your experiences. And as we start to wind down here, I really want to turn it over to you. And again, almost in the recruiting realm here, but what is your best recruiting pitch for why a young man or woman should consider a service academy education based on everything we've discussed today?
It will change your life forever in ways that you can't even fathom right now. You can go to Harvard, you can go to Stanford, you can go to Penn State, you can, go to all the big football games and have a great time. But outside of the fact that you're getting pretty much an Ivy League level education, you're going
Mhm.
to get to serve your country in a very meaningful way. You're going to get to travel the world. I've been to 55 countries in my life. Okay. I've had experiences that I would have never had in any other context, but I get to lead men and women as well,
Mhm.
as an officer in the military as well. This network of folks, the people I went to school with, to NAPS and to at Naval Academy, they're my best friends in my life. I don't necessarily talk to them all the
Mhm.
time, right? We have text groups of folks and that kind of stuff, but I know that tomorrow, if I needed it, I could make a phone call and I get it. And
Yep.
they know that if they call me, they got it, right?
Yep.
Whatever that is. It's very unique. It's different. You won't experience anything like that at any other institution. And again, because you're serving your country, there's a pride there that
Mhm.
you won't experience in other places. It'll be the toughest thing you've ever gone through. I look back at everything I've done. You heard my story about my corporate career and everything else. But to me, there was nothing harder than plebe summer. And if what I'm dealing with right now in front of me is not harder than plebe summer, then guess what? I can get through it. And
Yeah.
so in my mind, my attitude is okay, it's now I just got to figure out a way to how to get over the bridge, get around the bridge, get under the bridge, blow the bridge up, whatever I got to do to get there. But I'm getting to the other side
Yep.
because plebe summer was much tougher than that. That's the mentality. And so if that was, that alone helped me get through most of my life. And if I
Yep.
had that as just part of the experience of going to the U.S. Naval Academy, I'd choose it 50 times over.
100%. I love it. And again, I think Doubling down one more time on what you said, which is the opportunity to lead people, right? When we talk about people who genuinely, you can tell when you're in high school, if you have a desire to help people, to be of service in general, there's no better opportunity than being a junior officer in the military. These stories that we told, these stories that you told of how you dealt with your sailors and with your chief, my story of all these things, there's no better opportunity to make a positive, a direct positive impact in people's lives than being a junior officer. The responsibility and power and authority you have, if you truly invest in those relationships and you truly invest in the responsibility that you have, that you can make people's lives better. You can make a positive impact, right? Like the ability you have to genuinely be of service, to be a man or woman for others and help people. There's no better opportunity and never that fast, right? As a 22-year-old, as a 23-year-old, to have the means and the avenue, again, to make people's lives better, it's incredible, right? It's really cool. It's really cool. And so we'll finish this up with one final question back to you, which is going to be, again, I had mentioned earlier, is to never underestimate the impact you can make with simple actions and the power of, people investing in your lives. Do you have anyone from your time at the Academy that you specifically remember made a really positive impact on your Naval Academy journey? Is there an instance or a story or a person who you look back on and say, with a simple action, they made my life and my journey a lot better?
No, I have too many of those. I got to tell you, it's my best guy. It's my best buddies, right?
Yep.
It started at NAPS, and then I picked up another core crew, from my Naval Academy, years. But every day, even on my worst days, I knew I had a core cadre of folks that would just help me get through it, whatever it was, and they did. And they are the best friends in my life. They will always be. I've got great friends who I've met later in life and all of that, who I'm very close to. I love like brothers. But those Naval Academy guys, those NAPS guys, I was at the football game last weekend, and some of my best friends had flown in from Atlanta and from Charlotte, and they were there. Hadn't seen them for a couple, for a little bit, but
Sure.
we got to hang out, and then we ran into other classmates. Some of us were Napsters, and man, the old stories from, literally 41 years ago and all of that, right, that was impactful for us. I don't necessarily talk to those guys every day just because life has happened. We all have families and kids and grandkids and all that kind of stuff. But the impact that those young men had on me were life changing. And so I love them like brothers, and they love me like a brother. And that to me means everything.
Yep. Love every bit of it. Any final words, any parting thoughts that you want to leave with the Academy Insider audience before we finish up the episode today?
Go Navy, beat Army.
Beat Army. Well, David, thank you so much for taking your time, coming back, sharing your story, and giving back to this community. Again, if anyone is interested, you got to follow David on LinkedIn. Big presence there as well. And again, like he mentioned early on, really just invested in, and it's the beautiful thing of our network, and really interested in helping give back to Service Academy grads who are getting ready to make that transition as well. So, if you want to stay in touch, feel free to shoot me a message. I can get you connected. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening today. Shoot any questions you have to podcast@academyinsider.com. And thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Academy Insider Podcast. I really hope you liked it, enjoyed it, and learned something during this time. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe or leave a comment about the episode. We really appreciate to hear your feedback about everything and continue to make Academy Insider an amazing service that guides, serves, and supports midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families. Thank you.